All right, so we're going to start taking notes on triangles. As I said earlier when we were doing notes on the polygons, we're really only going to focus on two of them specifically and really dig into them and learn more about them. One of them was triangles, which we're going to start today. The other one is quadrilaterals, which we will start later after we get through our triangles. So let's take some notes on triangles. So there are two different ways we can classify triangles. So the front side is the first way, the back side is the second way. And again, if you can't print these papers out to write on, just take a piece of paper, write on those, keep that paper because you'll want to refer back to it, okay? So one way to classify triangles is by their angles. So these are going to sound very familiar because these go along with the angles that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. So that's why we did the points, the lines, the angles first, because it kind of builds on those. So the first type of triangle is an acute triangle, okay? Okay, so all three angles are acute. So all three of them are less than 90 degrees. So it would look like something like this. Okay, so this angle is acute, this angle is acute, this angle is acute. And again, there are more than one way to draw, there's more than one way to draw an acute angle. This is just how I'm going to draw it. So you may see other acute angles that look a little bit different, but if all three of these are less than 90, then it is an acute triangle. Okay? So our second kind of triangle is a right triangle. Okay, so the definition of a right triangle is that one of the angles is right. So there is one right angle, the other two are acute. Okay, so something like this. And again, I'm putting my little square in there. Not all worksheets, not all companies will. But again, if you could put the corner of a piece of paper right inside there and it fits, then it is a right angle. And your right angle is not always going to be here. This could be turned any which way, and as long as one of them is right, it is a right angle. And essentially, if one of them is a right angle, the other two are going to have to be acute. Okay, so again, it's not always going to sit nice and pretty like this. It can be moved any which way, but if you have one right angle, then it is a right triangle. So you can probably guess what our last one is. Obtuse. Okay, so obtuse. Okay, so there's one obtuse angle, the other two are acute. So same thing with here. Okay, so if I stick my corner in here, I can see that it's bigger. So that means it's obtuse. So you have one obtuse angle, the other two will be acute, and again, it's not always going to be sitting on a side like this. It could be any which way. As long as one of them is obtuse, the whole triangle is obtuse. Okay, so those are the three types. When we classify or identify or name them by their angles. Okay, so now on the back of the notes, we have the other way. So it says, another way to classify triangles is by their sides. So these are going to be new words to you. The other ones, those names came from things we've already talked about. So these will probably all be pretty much new. Okay, so our first type of triangle by its sides is equilateral. Okay, so equilateral. Okay, so the definition of an equilateral triangle is that all three sides are equal. They're the same length. So here we can you have equilateral, equal. Okay, so you kind of have some connection there. Okay, so all three sides are the same length. So just do the best you can with your drawing. Just try to make all three sides the same length. So if this side was 5 inches, this side would be 5 inches, this side would be 5 inches. Sometimes your worksheets will have the actual measurements or the measurements that they're giving you. They're not always to scale. Or they might do something like this. They might use a little like tick mark or a little mark, and if you have a little mark on all three sides, that means all three of those sides are the same length, or they're congruent. There's another word for you, congruent. Okay? So all three sides the same, equilateral. This next one, probably haven't heard of unless you specifically studied some of these back at the grade school. So isosceles. So our next one is isosceles. Okay, so on this one, two sides are equal or the same length. And again, just do the best you can. Sometimes it's a little easier than others to get them to look like you want. Okay, so that's a pretty decent one. So these two sides here are the same length. Obviously the bottom is not. But again, we do want to know that we can turn this any way. It does not always have to be sitting on its bottom or its side. It's just easier to draw it that way. So again, there's some worksheets that might actually have some measurements here. So like 5 feet, 5 feet, 3 feet. Some are going to do this, kind of like what we did here. Those showed that all three sides are the same length. This shows that these two sides are the same length and this one is not. Okay, and again, congruent, the same length. All right, so we have our last one, and again, you probably haven't heard this word unless you specifically have studied these. So, scalene. You could probably figure out what scalene means. If equilateral has 3 sides the same, isosceles has 2 sides the same, scalene means that none of the sides are the same. So no sides are equal. They are all different lengths. Sometimes I find these are actually the hardest to draw, but just do the best you can. So this looks a lot like this one, but this side here would be a little bit longer. If we kind of took them and moved it, this would actually be a little bit longer than that one. So it looks a lot like this one, but again, these are hard to draw. Just do the best you can. And we're not going to put any little marks on there because none of them are congruent. None of them are the same. So again, just do the best you can. Like I said, if we would kind of move this, we would see that it is a touch longer, okay? And then we have one more little thing I want to fill in. We are not going to talk too much about this yet. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on this week. But I want to go ahead and have it on these notes. That way we have them. When all of the angles of a triangle are added together, its sum will equal 180 degrees. And it does not matter what kind of triangle it is. It will always, every time you add all 3 angles of a triangle together, it will always equal 180 degrees. And we will talk more about this later on. But this way we kind of have it down, we have it on our notes, and it will always be there for reference. Okay, so we'll talk more about that later. So you're gonna do some worksheets, just identifying the different types of triangles. The first ones that you will be doing today, you'll have like multiple choice or check boxes. Some of them you'll have to type out because you do need to learn how to spell these names, what they are, just so there's just gonna be practice where you'll have to actually type the word out. So you will have a worksheet that has the triangles on, and then there will be Google Forms that accompany them. So you should be able to not have to worry about taking pictures of anything, sending it back to me. So be looking forward to those. All right, we'll talk to you later.